How's it going, you wonderful people? This is Andrew with the Greatest City in the World podcast. I'm here with Sarah Vogel, the owner of the Clay Cup in beautiful Altoona, Pennsylvania. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good.
Thanks for having me.
Especially since I have this amazing coffee here with me.
Yeah, cappuccino for the win.
That's right. So we are... I'm here today to talk to Sarah about a lot of different things, actually. City revitalization, starting a coffee shop, all those different kinds of things. She has a really great story, and so hopefully you guys will stick around to the end of this thing and hear everything that the Clay Cup is about, not only to promote her business, but hopefully she's going to help us in our revitalization of Kittanning, and you'll be inspired by her beautiful coffee shop here. Well, not just coffee shop, but coffee shop and art studio.
Yeah, coffee shop, pottery studio. Yeah.
So we'll get into that in a minute. If you guys haven't seen the video already, the video came out a couple of days ago. Did a lot of video around her coffee shop, so go and check that out, and then maybe you can come back and listen to the rest of the podcast once you have that full context. But anyway, have a bunch of different questions for you today, Sarah. You ready?
I am ready.
All right,
Let's
we're just gonna go right into it. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your history. How did you end up at this point?
So I grew up in Bellwood, which is a really small town right next to Altoona. It's about 2,000 people. And my siblings and I were primarily homeschooled, some public schooling as well, but I attribute a lot of what I do and how I think to my homeschooling years.
Yeah. And
spending more time with my grandparents, who had really incredibly developed skills in piano, woodworking, artwork, and beyond. So just being able to experience that, learn from them, and learn at a young age about checkbooks and banking and things that you don't necessarily learn in a traditional school setting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I look back on those years extremely fondly. And then at my senior year in high school, I actually had wanted to be a mechanical engineer my whole life.
Oh my gosh, me too.
I loved math and science
me too.
and physics, kind of a little bit nerdy. And so, but I always loved art, and I was always good at it, and I had professional artist grandmothers, and I had never had any formal training or anything. I just knew that I loved it and knew that I was good at it. And my senior year, something kind of switched, and I was like, I don't really know if I want to go to school for all these math classes and all these hard classes. I don't know if I was just being lazy or what, but I had the idea of, what if I wanted to be an artist, but the stigma around artists was always they're starving artists.
Yeah.
How are you actually going to be successful? How are you actually going to make money? And so I was like, what if I took art in some form, whether that's painting or photography or whatever, and paired it with something that kind of creates community and brings people in.
Yeah.
And I was like, coffee shop.
Absolutely.
That's coffee shop. So I had this brainchild in high school, and so I was like, okay, this is a really cool vision. I don't know how I'm ever going to make this happen. Rewind for a second. Most of my family are also entrepreneurs. My dad was self-employed for most of my life. His siblings all had businesses or worked for each other. I was surrounded by that as well. So
you were groomed for this for your whole life, and you didn't know it.
There was no escaping it. It's in my blood.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I was going to escape it, I guess, with the engineer thing, but that light switched pretty quick. So I did go to Liberty University for 3 semesters. I was studying a business minor and an art major, and I didn't really get into any core classes. I think I had 1 drawing class, and I kind of just had this realization, I'm going to come out of this with a lot of debt, and everything I really want to do, I can study under somebody else. I could learn myself. I can develop these skills. I don't need a degree for what I really want to do.
Right.
Especially if it's in the arts.
Yep.
So I dropped out, and I kind of had the attitude of I'm just going to take every opportunity I can and just get as much experience as I can, whatever field that is, even if it seems unrelated to what I want to do, and see where that leads me. And I probably had 10 to 12 jobs from the time I was 20 until 25. Now, it wasn't like I was going from job to job to job to job. It was I had 4 jobs at one time.
Yeah.
and I was a crazy workaholic.
Oh my gosh, we have the same story. This is crazy.
So But because I was like really working wholeheartedly and knowing like these skills that I'm learning at all of these jobs, regardless if they seem related or not, are going to benefit me later. So
Absolutely.
I had jobs that were, you know, I was a waitress. I worked with people with intellectual disabilities. I helped manage a commercial cleaning company. Man, I'm going to start blanking. There were a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And I one of the jobs took me to Florida for a couple months, like temporary. I moved to West Palm Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And this would have been in the spring of 2012. And in West Palm Beach, there were these painting places specifically for painting where people would go in, take their wine, and someone would teach them a painting step by step.
Yeah.
And I remember like seeing these places everywhere, and nothing like that was back here yet.
Right.
And I was like, oh my, I could totally teach that. I had the ability to break things down very simply,
Yeah.
which I learned when I worked with people with intellectual disabilities,
For sure.
to take a task and break it down into something really simple. So I was like, I could take a painting and break it down step by step for someone that's never painted before and have them walk out with something that they're really proud of.
Yeah.
So I kind of kept that nugget in the back of my head. And then when I came back, I ended up leaving that job. It was not a good fit for me. It was like cubicle office job. And I'm not that type of person, as you can probably tell by my ramblings. And I was like, okay, what's some job that I can just go out and get that maybe has some creative aspects to it? And I had also done photography and things like that in all those prior jobs. So I had tastes of creative jobs that I was like, oh, that's maybe kind of what I want to do, not
Right.
sure. So I was kind of like picking up bits and pieces as I progressed through all of that. And after that job in Florida, I came back to Bellwood, where I grew up, and I ended up moving into Altoona, which is right next door,
Right.
basically. And my whole family was from this area. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, everybody. So I grew up hearing about what downtown Altoona used to be like
Yeah. Oh man.
during World War II, how it was the place to like go shopping. The railroad community was really big.
Yep.
And I always loved architecture, like the history of things. I was always interested in that. And when I moved back to Altoona, I had that idea kind of come to life again of pairing something creative with coffee.
Yeah.
And because I wanted to start getting involved in something creative, because I was like, okay, if this is what I really want to do, I got to start getting some sort of experience.
Yeah.
And I remember driving down 11th Avenue, which is right here,
Yeah.
looking at all these cool buildings, and there wasn't really any life down here yet.
Yeah.
And looking at this building specifically as I was driving down and thinking, that's the building I want to be in someday. Whether that's photography and coffee or art and coffee, like that is my building.
And it was literally this one that we're sitting in?
I had never been in it.
Wow.
I just saw the front. I just knew it's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so I actually called about it that week to see like, okay, what's the rent? How many photo shoots would I have to do? Or, what would I have to do to make that rent?
Right.
Not even thinking about like, okay, money for renovations or whatever, just like getting in the building.
Yep.
And it was like way far-fetched for me, nothing that I thought I would ever be able to do. And so I was like, okay, like I can't be downtown yet, that's fine. And so what can I do that's creative? So I applied at a Trader Joe's because they have at least one in-house artist in every store.
Oh, wow.
That makes every sign by hand, every shelf sign by hand. So I was like, okay, if I can get a job at Trader Joe's, maybe I can become one of their sign artists. Like this
Wow.
hopeful, dream. And I did. And I told them when I was interviewing, like, I'm interested in learning how to be a sign artist. Like, what do you have to do to make that happen?
Yeah.
And they're like, we'll get you trained on everything, and then we'll kind of see where you're at with lettering and stuff. And so they liked what I did. Their main sign artist trained me, and I was like one of the main sign people at that point for that store, which was so cool.
That's
Literally,
crazy. So you literally just like, no experience. You just hustled your way to make this happen.
Oh goodness, yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How old, do you mind asking, how old are you now?
I'm 28.
28.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So when I got that job at Trader Joe's, it was, I want to say, that was in 2013.
Yeah.
So I had some other jobs and stuff after I came back from Florida, and I worked with some other people with intellectual disabilities, went back to that for a little bit. And then I had this Trader Joe's job. And while I was working at Trader Joe's, I had like 4 jobs at one time for years.
Yeah.
And now I only had like 1 or 2. Still doing a little bit of photography here and there. And I was like, I need to see what else creative I can get involved with.
Yeah.
And then that's when that nugget of those painting classes came back into my head from Florida. And I was like, oh man, where could I teach these? And there was only one creative business in this area that I could think of, and it was a small paint-your-own pottery studio in Hollidaysburg, which is on the other side of Altoona.
Uh-huh.
And it was called Playtime Pottery, and I was like, I'm gonna go talk to that owner and see if she'll let me try these painting classes, because ultimately it could benefit her,
Right.
more people in her space, and let me kind of start navigating the creative world.
Yeah.
So I went and talked to the owner there, and nothing ever became of that for a few months. And so I like reached out again, and that owner had sold it to somebody else. So I was like, oh, new owner, I can pitch this again.
Yep.
Cool. So I went and talked to the second owner, and I was like, look, if you let me teach these painting classes, I think it's going to be a really popular thing. Like, no one else is doing it around here. It was really big in Florida. It's going to bring more people into your small space here
Yep.
to showcase what you do. And she was like, yeah, like, let's do it. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is my chance. Like, I'm going to be teaching painting classes. This is what I wanted to do my whole life.
Yeah.
Thinking like I had arrived.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
And as usual, it's like when you think that, you're just getting started.
Yeah. Like, I didn't know where else my whole journey was going to go, and I still don't.
Uh-huh.
But so I started teaching these painting classes, and they were going really well. People were like, you are an amazing teacher, like all these words of affirmation that I'm like feeding off of.
Yeah.
And you can tell what my love language is.
Yeah.
And I had been teaching them for like 4 months. We only were doing like 1 or 2 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I think I want to sell this business. And I was like, first I was like, oh no, like here goes everything that I've wanted to do my whole life.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but wait, maybe I could buy it.
Yeah.
So I said, how much do you want? And she's like, $12,000.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. I was thinking like, okay, that's a lot of money, but compared to the college debt I would have had, or,
Yeah.
you know,
Pretty
even
manageable.
buying a car.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I bet I can get $12,000. I didn't have anything saved. I should have.
Yeah.
Wasn't the greatest person with money, but I was like, I can get $12,000. So I didn't have a lot of credit history, but I was able to pull 2 lines of credit from 2 different places and get $12,000.
Yeah.
And she actually let me work some of it down by teaching more classes and letting her keep all of the profits instead
Yeah.
of paying me. So I bought this business in 2015. It was May of 2015. Mind you, I also got engaged and married and bought a house that same year that
At
I bought this
24
business.
years old.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that was good, quick math.
That's awesome. Man.
And so I was still working at Trader Joe's and taking on this business and doing photography occasionally.
Yeah.
And this business was new to me. And I was naive when I bought it. I didn't really do a lot of research. I just felt like that was the right thing for me to do.
Yeah.
I prayed about it, and I was like, okay, like this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Not that I still should have looked at things a lot differently, probably from a financial aspect of the business, but I didn't have that experience, and I didn't ask a ton of people because I didn't want to get the kickback of,
Right.
okay, this is a creative business. Is it really going to be successful?
Yeah.
So I bought it and started realizing like, oh wow, she was going to probably go out of business in like 6 months if she didn't sell it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to make this a success. Like, this has so much potential. I've seen it in the art classes. It was just like a lack of marketing, I felt, a lack of like enthusiasm, and I ended up multiplying that business by 5 within the first year.
Oh, wow.
So, not that it was that much because of where it was when it started, but it made it very lucrative for me because I taught. So, in 2016, I taught 180 canvas classes there.
Yeah.
Plus all my pottery events, plus the walk-in customers. So I was probably working like 80 plus hours a week, easily. I had quit Trader Joe's after October of 2015 when I realized, like, okay, I need to put everything I have into this. And that was the first time I had one job in like years.
Yeah.
So I went all in.
Well, then when you can really focus, you can do it the way that you want to do it finally.
Yeah. So at the beginning of 2016, when I had it for about 8 months, or I don't know, maybe it was 7 months. Anyway, I started thinking like, oh my goodness, like this has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And I was like, then I started revisiting the idea of being downtown Altoona.
Right.
And so.
Whole different market then too.
Yeah. And Altoona is a whole different ball game of people thinking things were going to fail and not be successful, and a lot of that kind of stigma, because I'm going to pause from my story for a second. Altoona was booming until probably like the 80s when things started to cycle back around to big shopping malls.
Yep.
And then away from downtowns, and everything down here died out. And things had tried to open here and failed. Coffee shops had tried to open and failed. And then Penn State put a couple of their classes down here, probably around like 2009-ish. And I think people started to see that cycle of it coming back to downtowns, which we're in the middle of that right now, where it's moving away from big shopping malls back around to the small downtowns.
Yeah, I agree. And Kittanning, same story. I mean, huge reduction in businesses downtown in the 70s, 80s, and manufacturing left and all those kinds of things. And people quit shopping downtown. They built a Walmart on the hill. All of a sudden, everyone goes there, and like it's been this big vacuum. And I do think Kittanning, Altoona, all these towns in Western Pennsylvania are primed for that comeback, because I think
it's national, really.
Yeah, people your age and younger, they want community again.
Yeah, community. They want things that are handmade, that are really unique, that are artisan, that they can't find anywhere else.
Right.
That they can't find on the internet.
Yeah.
So, the beginning of 2016, I realized that this playtime pottery, I was like, oh my goodness, like art can be successful.
Yeah.
I had grown the Facebook page, like probably from like 2,000 followers to 7,000.
Wow.
I started an Instagram for it. Like I just was really trying to hit it from all angles.
Yeah.
And I was like, felt this sense of urgency, like, Sarah, if you don't go downtown Altoona now, it's not going to be available to you.
Right.
And I prayed about it and I thought about it, and it was like, you have to do this now.
Yeah.
And so I thought right back to this building.
Yep.
And it was still available, and I walked through it, and like I knew I still wanted it. I didn't even need to walk through it really, but of course I had to see it. So I walked through it, and I was like, this is going to be my building. Like it is going to be my building. I don't know how that's going to happen, but it's going to be mine. And Altoona needs this coffee shop. It needs the community, and if I can pair something creative. And at that point, I knew it was going to be pottery and maybe some other art things that I had gotten into, because I saw the potential of it and the success of it.
Yeah.
And so the previous owner of this building, his name was Irv Seltzer. I think he is still alive. He's pretty up there in age. I called him up and I was like, Mr. Seltzer, I would love to talk about me being in your building, leasing, and then buying your building, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, like, let's have a meeting. And from my perspective, walking into that meeting, I was like, here I am, 25-year-old college dropout, no experience. I have this little business. Like, he's going to laugh at me. He owned, like, 75% of downtown Altoona.
Right.
Okay. He was, like, an attorney. He, like, very, he had his ducks in a row.
You're right.
And I'm like, he is going to laugh at me. And I had heard stories about him being a very tough business owner.
Yeah.
Or like just businessman in general. And I knew that the previous tenants that had been in this building were illegally taking the tin ceilings and selling them. They were just leasing, so that was illegal for them to do. He had kind of been screwed over by a lease to buy agreement with them, and I was like, why would he be open to doing any of that with me?
Yeah.
I'm 25, I'm like a baby to him.
Right.
So I walked into his office, and thankfully I had a little bit of a personal connection. Not really, but his son graduated with my mom.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, hey, I think, my mom graduated with your son, just trying to build a really friendly foundation. Like,
just get some kind of footing to stand on.
Yeah, pretty much. And I before I even went into how I wanted his building and wanted the space, I told him what my vision was for the business, for the downtown, for the city.
Yeah.
To see it revitalized, to see so much life down here, to create a space where people can gather and meet that's modern and fun, and have a place for people to come and do things with their family, like me.
Yeah.
Making art accessible to people that don't think that they're artists or creatives. And he was like, wow, we really need that here. Like, he was like really on board with the vision, which I was shocked with to begin.
Yeah.
And then I went into how I wanted to lease and then buy his building. And he was supposed to get me the lease like the next week.
Yeah.
I think this was in February of 2016 that I met with him. And I didn't hear from him for a week. And then it was 2 weeks, and I was like, I better call him, remind him.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna let this just fly away. So I called him every 2 weeks for like 3 months.
Yeah.
And he would talk to me. It wasn't like he was ignoring me.
Yeah.
I just think he didn't know how serious I actually was. And I'd call him every 2 weeks and be like, Mr. Seltzer, like you said, you're gonna have that lease for me. Is it gonna be ready soon? Like I'm ready here. Like,
yeah.
Let's do it. And finally, it was like in June or something that he got me the first draft of the lease. And then we negotiated a lease to buy agreement, and he was more gracious than anyone had ever seen him be with anybody.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was favor over this situation because he gave me lease forgiveness for the first 3 months that I had to renovate in here, where I didn't have to pay any money because I was paying the money to renovate.
Putting it in the building, yeah.
He did not micromanage my renovations while he still owned the building.
Yeah.
Of course, I double checked with him. It got his approval and everything, but he micromanaged none of that.
Yeah.
I think he really did trust my vision, like I said. And
so how long did it take you to buy the building then at that point?
So I leased from September of 2016 until September of 2017. And that's when I bought. And we opened in March of 2017. So we had been open for a few months before I purchased.
Okay.
So I did things, if some people would say I took a huge risk and did things backwards.
Yeah.
And I did, because I put a lot of money into renovating and opening before I even owned this space, knowing it could potentially get somehow taken right out from under me.
Sure.
And there was some security within the lease and within the agreement, but I didn't own it.
Yeah.
But it ended up working out extremely well, because if I hadn't been open for them to see the revenue of the business, I probably wouldn't have been able to purchase.
Well, yeah, for sure, because you need that to prove the loan. And you think about, I think a lot of times, 25 years old, the world calls you a kid, and probably rightfully so, right?
Yeah,
we're pretty naive at that age.
My dad always said growing up, you're not an adult until you're 25.
Yeah. And so, but what a better time to take a risk, right? Because
Yeah.
you were build up all this experience, and you're like, well, now or never kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I look at the downtowns, just like you said, like the people that get in now are going to be the ones that win long term, because these buildings that you can buy for $100,000, they're going to be $500,000 20 years from now.
And even now, this is 2019.
Yeah.
Like, there are maybe 2 buildings available, but nothing that would have ever worked for what I wanted to do.
And so you're...
And that would have worked for me price-wise and everything. Like,
right.
The timing was absolutely perfect. But yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So in that...
I just did a lot of talking, so you're going to have to ask some questions.
No, yeah, you're good. So we took care of a lot of questions, actually, all in one story, but really super interesting. I can't believe you're only 28 years old and you have all this stuff already. Do you feel like you've lived a full life worth of stuff already?
Sometimes I'm like, can I retire? But then I seriously have so many visions of other things that I want to do and accomplish.
You're just getting
started. And I don't know how that's going to happen yet, but I think back on how I didn't think this was going to happen. I didn't know how this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And the faithfulness of the Lord through all of it, like even with the finances and stuff, like so I just keep dreaming.
It's awesome.
Pretty big.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I'm 33 and I still feel like I've lived a whole life already, and I'm like, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
Like I haven't even started yet.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. So 2009 to 2019, you've kind of been connected to downtown Altoona. What have you seen change in that time period? Like how has this area kind of regenerated?
So I think there's been a lot of change, like positive change. I get really excited when I talk about it because, like I said, I grew up with family that used to tell me about how they would take the train into Altoona from Bellwood, my grandparents, and do all of their shopping here. And Gables was huge, and like the hustle and bustle. And then I grew up seeing it dead.
Right.
There were like 2 businesses down here that were always down here, and everything else was vacant. Mm-hmm. But then, like I said, when Penn State started putting a couple of their classes down here, Penn State Altoona, I think people started to think a little bit differently. Not everybody yet, because there was kickback even until probably last year about, is our downtown business is actually going to be successful?
Right.
But if you look at it now, like I said, there's like 2 vacant buildings. There are 4 buildings right now that are being renovated and worked on, 5 right on this street.
It's like a lot of activity going on down here.
Like when I opened, now if I had asked a lot of people if I should open a coffee shop down here, I probably would have gotten a very strong, don't do it, it's not going to be successful. A lot of people had tried. Even Steve Sheets said coffee shops downtown will not be successful. He comes in here, by the way, and I know him, so I can say that.
That's fantastic.
But they have a Sheets Entrepreneurial Center for Penn State right across the street. And they have like a business
you have that down here. There's like an art museum down here. Is all that relatively new?
The art museum, I'm not sure how long they've been here. I think probably for a while. They were probably like a pioneer.
Right.
And that was one of Penn State's classes and like part of their campus that they put down here. I'm not sure what year that was built, but
so it started with just a couple little pockets of activity
and businesses that had been here for a long time, like Bill Sells Bold is a restaurant, Sheer Power, a hair salon that's right down here. That they survived through those years where no one thought anything could be successful. Maybe because they're more of like a destination, like people would come from Hollidaysburg to go to Bold. When you have a regular hairstylist, you stay with that hairstylist. But I think what they were doing too also made them grounded here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've seen now a lot of change in 10 years, though.
And just change from the community's attitude. Like if I asked, like people can see now that things are successful and things are happening. As opposed to when I opened, if I would have asked people, they would have said, you're not going to be open very long.
So it does take someone with kind of that pioneering spirit that says, hey, I'm going to go against what people say because I know that this can work long term. And it was also like, I'm called to this. I'm supposed to do this. So it was a combination of all of it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So in starting your business, I talk to people all the time, and it's like everyone wants to start a coffee shop. It seems like because everyone's been to.
It seems like such a fun atmosphere. I mean, it is such a fun atmosphere. But
So I mean, like, what advice would you have for someone out there that says, I want to start a coffee shop, or I want to do this. How are you able to be so successful? What do you think are like some of the key things that made you say, yeah, this works now?
If I would not have opened the pottery and the coffee together to feed off of each other and fuel each other, because I was pretty much the first coffee shop besides Sheetz and Dunkin' in this area, I don't think I would have survived.
Yeah.
And not because I was doing anything wrong, but it was about educating people about specialty coffee, the sustainability of coffee, making sure the farmers are being taken care of from every step of the process, because big commodity commercial coffee like Dunkin' and big companies like that, those farmers are not being paid enough to survive. They could be growing avocados and making a lot more money, but they love coffee, so they continue to like scrounge by. But so it's about educating people, making sure they understand why our prices are the way that they are, and creating an atmosphere where like they feel known, they feel welcome, they feel like they're a part of contributing to what's happening here. So I actually didn't open the pottery right away. I opened in March with the cafe, and then my kiln didn't come until July, so that's when we started the pottery. And I mean, in the beginning, there was so much hype. We were like super busy. But if I wouldn't have added that pottery in, I don't know if I would have been hitting a broad enough market with just the cafe at first.
Well, I'm sure people come in to do pottery, that's a whole different market. And so they come in, then they try your coffee for the first time, and they're like,
or vice versa.
This is way different than Sheetz. Way better. And so those two things feed off of each other. Have you seen any kind of symbiotic partnerships with other local businesses? Like, have you ever tried to do?
Yeah, we have done some different collaborations. I think the idea downtown was businesses kind of had to like get along and be friendly with each other to really make it successful. I think there's still definitely that mentality, which has been cool to see too.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the shop local movement, and we have to support each other. We've been doing research. We're trying to get Kittanning on like one of the best small towns in America lists. Like, that's our big goal.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so through that, we've been researching like all the small towns in America, and that's one thing that's come up over and over and over again is all these small towns like don't have any chains downtown because everyone wants to support the mom and pop shops and do all those kinds of things. And I think that is
the goal for this street specifically, 11th Avenue.
Yeah. So you're seeing a lot of that happen where you guys are supporting each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of bring it back to the Sheetz and Dunkin' conversation, because there's a lot of talk in Kittanning, same thing, and I'm sure other small towns that say, well, how do we compete when McDonald's is selling coffee for $1 and you're going to have to sell it for $4?
Yeah.
How did you approach that? I know you talked a little bit about education. Did you have to kind of incentivize people to try it the first time, or did you have to?
I think people were like, "Oh, that's different for this place. Like, it feels big city. Let's go try it."
Yeah.
And there are people that aren't going to love coffee that isn't filled with sugar or frozen coffees. Like, we don't.
Right.
We do sweeter drinks, but we really try to keep it coffee focused.
Yeah.
So finding those people that understand it and love it and rally behind the purpose of specialty coffee. But really, I think like because it was new, that was beneficial to us because it was different from what we had already. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how about like the community? The other part is like local government and zoning and all those kinds of things. I'm sure that you had to get permits to do some stuff that you had to do here. What was your experience like with Altoona? What the city of Altoona or the local government here? How did they support you through the process? Did they kind of help you through things? Did you find it really cumbersome? Like, what was your experience like doing that kind of stuff?
I personally had awesome experiences with the city.
Okay.
I know other business owners that might say differently.
Yeah.
But I also really made sure to follow the rules and be respectful of the rules. And my contractor knew how to pull the permits and things that he needed when he needed them. And even like the fire department, when they come in and do fire inspection, or the codes department, like they've all been wonderful to work with. So
okay.
The mayor's supportive of all the small businesses, so.
Okay. And you talked a little bit, we were talking a little bit before this, there was something that happened that you I don't know, some major art project. There's a
Yeah.
story there about like just something that like a real God story.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So when we bought the building, we knew that the roof needed replaced.
Yeah.
And it was leaking. There's 2 stories above us. So it was leaking in the 3rd floor. So I'm like, okay, it's not leaking into my coffee shop. Like, we can put it off for a little bit.
Yeah, but not too long.
Right. And then the summer, it was like, okay, summer of 2018. So we bought the building in September of 2017. And then spring and summer of 2018, it rained ridiculously, like every other day. Like,
Yeah.
so much rain. And it just tore my roof apart, basically. Like, to the point where if it rained hard enough, it would leak through the roof, through the 3rd floor, into the 2nd floor, through the 2nd floor, down into my coffee shop.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this is really not good. And my husband and I, we were praying about it. We're like, Lord, like, we don't have the money to fix this. I don't feel like it's something that I should be taking a loan out for.
Right.
How are we going to fix our roof?
Yeah.
And at that same time, like in the end of May of 2018, someone sent me this competition that Sheetz was having for artists within the 6 states that they have stores
Yeah.
to design their tractor trailers and their gas tankers and put our art on these.
Just like the vinyl that they put
Yeah,
on.
like, yeah, and to
Nice.
represent their company
Yeah.
in a totally different way. And they were gonna originally pick one winner from each state to do the trucks. And so I entered the competition, and there were supposed to be 3 rounds to this competition, and I never heard back after the first round, so I just assumed that I didn't make it.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big area of people, of artists that have a lot
Oh,
more
yeah.
experience than me. And
You think all of
I remember-
Pennsylvania is like, what, 5 million people?
yeah, let alone however, like the 6 states.
Yeah.
Right. So, I remember standing up in the 3rd floor being like, Lord, we need a roof. How are you going to do this? Like,
Yeah.
just basically saying like, you have to do something, Lord, because I really don't feel like I'm supposed to borrow any money.
Right.
Meanwhile, like, water is like dumping in our 3rd floor every other day when it's raining.
Yeah.
And then I got a phone call or an email one morning, and it was downpouring outside, and I'm sitting in my car, and I got this email that was like, hey, you're one of the winners for the Sheetz Fleet Art Contest. You know, wait for follow-up emails to like start the whole process of the design. And I was like, is this a joke? Like, I never did the 2nd round, which is where we were supposed to turn in like a concept and like,
Yeah.
and I was like, is this a joke? And then I like kept reading. I'm like, this is not a joke.
Yeah.
Mind you, when I got the roof quote, which I had gotten before, so I knew what I needed, it was like $24,800 was the quote, I think.
Yeah.
The commission for the winners of this contest was $25,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, like, this can't be real. And because my dream is to really be a professional artist, to have my artwork licensed by big companies. And I was a winner. Like, I went through the whole design process, which was like a couple months long, and
So
they ended
amazing.
up picking 11 winners.
Yeah.
So I have artwork on like 10 different trucks.
How
My
cool.
face is on the trucks. But
Now we gotta look
and
for
it's
it.
so cool because each artist represents Sheetz in a different way,
Yeah.
with their own style. And I'm a watercolor artist, so mine is definitely a little bit different than the other ones.
Yeah.
But that day when I walked in, I'm like still like dumbfounded at this email, thinking it's a joke. Like, it was downpouring and water starts pouring in,
Yeah.
like, to the coffee shop, and I was like, Lord, like, you're rarely early, but you are never late.
Yeah.
And then it was the same amount of money, and we replaced the roof in the fall.
So
But,
amazing.
yeah.
So you need to start a coffee shop. You got to have a dream.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have some hustle. Mm-hmm. You got to have some some experience, or like some.
I don't know. I mean,
You got to build some relationships.
yes,
I
you
should
have
say.
to. You have to build relationships. So I did the coffee shop thing. I did backwards too.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, I really want to open a coffee shop. I got the space, and then I was like, oh goodness, I have to learn about coffee now. So I found the roaster that I wanted to work with, which they're incredible.
Yeah.
They source everything. They help us with our equipment, like They are amazing, and they train too. So they did training with me. They do trainings with our team. So I really got connected with a roaster that gave me all the things that I needed. But yeah, I did things backwards.
And then you got to have the grace of God.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
1,000,000%.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is, it's so interesting. I mean, we could go through my life story, but I think most of the people listening kind of know it. But I was like, wanted to be an engineer, dropped out of school after a year, after doing business, decided I didn't need school to do the things I wanted to do, and so I just hustled my way. And then God just over and over and over again just met every single need that I had, and it's just incredible. So.
Yeah, and even from like being really like open and raw, like there have been times where I'm like, is there going to be enough?
Yeah.
And the Lord there has always been enough, even when it didn't feel like there was going to be enough.
Yeah.
And He is so faithful in proving to me over and over again that like this is what I'm called to do, and He hasn't brought me to this point just for me to like have the doors closed.
Amen.
Business is great.
Yeah.
Like it's not a matter of being slow. It's just we're sustaining a 10,000 square foot building on a cafe and a pottery shop right now.
Right.
And I don't pay my people just minimum wage. Like I invest back into them.
Yeah.
Because I want them to stay. I want them to feel like we're invested in them and they're invested in us. So.
Well, and that's actually how we got connected in the first place. Two people actually emailed me about your place here, because I've been harping on coffee shop for Kittanning for a while, and they were like, you have to visit the Clay Cup in Altoona. And so that's how I ended up here. I walked in the door, didn't know you were a Christian, didn't know anything about your story, never been to this place in my life, and but both people told me these people have great coffee and they have the best baristas in Western Pennsylvania. And so I'm like, how did you train your staff? How did they get to the point where, obviously you came in, you said you didn't even know anything about coffee really, and then now you have like these best baristas in the business. What's been kind of like your business theory on pouring back into your people to make them really great?
That makes my heart so proud.
It should.
I know. So I have the best manager in the whole world. Her name is Lindsay. And Lindsay and I have a really cool story to begin with, because she was also looking for a building to open a coffee shop downtown.
Okay.
And it never worked for her. Every door was always closed for her when she was looking at spaces and financing and everything. And I knew her from church. She's a worship leader at church, and like we'd always like kind of known each other.
Yeah.
And I had to fight for a while the spirit of competition when I knew that she was also trying to open a coffee shop, and I hadn't even started pursuing a building yet, but I knew that's what I was supposed to do.
Right.
And as soon as I got the building, I called her up and I said, hey, look, I know that you're really interested in coffee. I know that you want to have your own coffee shop one day. I have the perfect opportunity for you to see it built from the ground up, get all the experience you want to open your own coffee shop someday.
Yeah.
And, she thought about it, prayed about it, told her my whole vision, and she was like, okay, I'm in. And I was like, yes. And
so
like
amazing.
She is incredible, because we are completely opposite personalities in every personality test we ever take.
Yeah.
Completely opposite.
So
and
funny.
I think that could be very clashing in a lot of relationships or work relationships, but it works really well for us. But she manages the cafe. She does all the hiring with me. She really is the one who helped get the systems in place and the processes and checklists and all the things. And she's really intentional about doing like quarterly meetings with each employee. But when we hire, we don't look at experience. We can teach you everything you need to know.
Right.
We are looking at personality, drive, how you're going to be with our customers.
Yep.
And with our other baristas. And we're very strict about like, you don't talk about another barista behind their back ever.
Right.
If there's an issue, you talk to them. If you talk to them and there's still an issue, you bring it to a manager.
So you've created a really Christian culture here too, then.
Mm-hmm. Not all of our baristas are believers.
And not explicitly, but
yeah.
you've created that culture
Yeah.
that's kind of like the foundation of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And I think, I do pay more than minimum wage, because I want people to stay for not forever. I know this isn't necessarily a forever job unless you have Lindsay's job or my job or whatever, but
Yeah.
I want people to stay for longer amounts of time. We have a very low turnover rate. The only reason we have lost employees is because, one, they got a job in the field they had a degree in, or
Yeah.
two, they needed full-time job with benefits 9 to 5 Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
because they had families or kids.
Right.
Or one other person had a child and moved away. So like I'm very, very proud of that. And we have that same culture with our pottery employees as well.
That's awesome.
So
Well, very cool. Well, I think we're wrapping it up. What I'm really curious about, I know I didn't prepare you on this question at all, so, but where do you go from here? Like, you're 28 years old, you're in this beautiful downtown area, you are like successful here, you have this beautiful place, like you could definitely just kind of coast and let this thing ride. But I know you have bigger dreams than that. What do you want to do? Like, sky's the limit.
There's so much more. When people ask me this question, I'm like, the coffee shop is such a small, critical, but small portion of the vision.
Yeah.
I don't want to manage a coffee shop for the rest of my life.
Sure.
I love what it does here is extremely important, but we have the rest of the building to renovate. That's going to be like a $600,000 to $800,000 project.
Oh wow.
So I'm really waiting on the Lord in knowing when to start that. It's going to happen in phases. It's not going to happen all at once.
Sure.
And just what that looks like. The second floor is going to be overflow for the coffee shop, which, like, on Tuesday we had no seats in here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a regular occurrence when pottery's open, when the cafe's open, to have no seats available. So it's going to be a little bit more loungy up there. I can hold private events up there. We'll have a small additional little coffee bar for private events. But then I can have artists come in and teach real clay classes, real pottery classes. And the third floor will be a high-end Airbnb. It's about 2,400 square feet.
Wow.
It's beautiful, skylights,
How cool.
high ceilings. For me, last year I had really incredible things happen with my artwork, with sheets.
Yeah.
TJ Maxx picked up 6 of my pieces of artwork and put them on throw pillows all across the country.
Oh wow.
But like, and that's what I want to do. Like, I want to license my artwork with big companies. I'm not sure how to make that happen. That's something that each artist, I think, has to navigate on their own. There's no set way, like, oh, connect with this person, it'll connect you with all the design people in the world, with all these, big box retailers.
But I'm sure you get that first one, and it's kind of like, now you're.
It gives you a little bit of
credibility.
But right now I'm in this place where I don't have any leads for anything big like that.
Yeah.
I don't have any competitions I'm working on, but I'm painting things that are specific brands of companies and tagging them on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and they've retweeted, they've shared, they've commented.
Wow.
So getting interactions with these big companies is really cool. I'm not making money off of it, but I think eventually that will build my reputation. It will maybe eventually make some sort of connection.
Yeah.
And this building next door is vacant, and I want to buy it. Mm-hmm. Because I'm talking about all my dreams.
Yeah,
here.
no, this is cool.
This is a shared wall right here, and that building next door is massive, and I want to do glass blowing furnaces in there, and have glass blowers come in and do workshops, and people can learn how to do stained glass, and then the second and third floor would be like living quarters.
So you really want to expand the art vision, and let that continue to fuel the growth of the coffee shop and all those kinds of things too.
So I would open up between the buildings so that people can come in and get coffee and see glass blowing or paint pottery, or go upstairs and do pottery.
So cool.
Yeah, and more coffee shops too. I have ideas for 5 more coffee shops. So.
Well, as you're getting a little bit busier here, let's wrap it up. But do you have any final advice for anyone out there saying, they want to start their own business, they're not sure where to start? Like, what would you suggest for them to do?
So my first bit of advice is always find a good attorney, a good banker, and a good accountant. And build your network, and don't be afraid. Have a balance of being wise in your decisions, but not being afraid to take risks and step out in faith too.
Yeah.
Because you have to take some risk.
Right.
Like there's going to be risk no matter what. You can't play it completely safe. And whatever you're doing, there's always something to be learned from that that's going to benefit you later. So if you're in a place right now where you know you don't want to be there forever, but that has its purpose.
Right.
And if you can dive into that wholeheartedly, even though you don't want to be there forever, there is so much value in that. And my life phrase is be content but not complacent. Content where you are, knowing that you are learning what you need to learn in that moment for future, but you are not complacent because you are looking for what God is leading you to next.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm such a proponent of that too. Like if you're working at McDonald's and you're just like, you hate the job and you just want to get out of there, you still have to realize you're learning skills there that are going to apply for whatever you want to do
like
next.
Communicating with people and being efficient and
and
so many things.
It's up here too. You're like, you're learning what's the right mindset, because there's always going to be things that you don't want to do. Like I'm sure you, like me, probably don't enjoy quarterly tax time. Like I don't like to do that, but because of like going through other things that I didn't want to do, I'm like, I have to do this. This is part of the process, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And so.
And like learning, and even when you're walking in faith, it's a mind game.
Yeah.
Like we're always reminding yourself of what you're learning, why you're learning, how that's going to help you in the future, but what God's promises are for you, even when it doesn't feel like that.
You have to believe and know and understand that the future is going to be better than you think that it's going to be. Yeah. Always. Well, this was amazing.
Good.
Thank you so much for letting me interview and taking all the time today. I know you're very busy, but I so enjoyed being here. You have a beautiful place.
Thank you.
Wish you all the best.
Thanks.
And thank you for pouring into the audience as well.
Yeah, I hope it was encouraging and inspiring in some way.
Absolutely.
And thanks for letting me rant.
Well, maybe we'll do it again someday.
Yeah,
it was
that'd
really,
be great.
really cool to be here.
Cool.
Well, thank you guys for watching. And of course, if you want to connect with Sarah, we'll make sure to put all of her links for Facebook and Instagram for the Clay Cup, and maybe your personal one too for your artwork.
Art pages.
Yeah, so if you want to check out what she's doing, or if you want to contact her, I'm sure she would be more than happy to have you connected on Instagram and Facebook and all those kinds of things. But that's it. We'll talk to you guys in the next one.